welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're tackling something pretty revolutionary.
Oh, do tell.
The Fairlight CMI. It's this Aussie invention.
Fairlight CMI. Rings a bell.
Well, even if the name isn't instantly familiar, the sounds it made definitely are. We're talking hit songs, iconic artists, and the brilliant minds behind it all.
This should be fascinating. So where do we begin?
Let's start in Sydney, 1979. Two guys, Kim Ryrie and Peter Vogel, are tinkering away.
A classic tale of innovation. In a garage or something.
Well, a workshop in Rushcutters Bay, to be precise. These weren't some corporate bigwigs, just two Aussies driven by this passion for music and tech.
Love that. So what were they working on exactly?
They were on this quest to create a digital alternative.
To what?
To the analog synthesizers that were everywhere in music back then. Ryrie, especially, was convinced computers were the future of sound.
That's some serious foresight for 1979.
Right. So picture this. Sydney Harbor, 1979, Ryrie and Vogel in their workshop, and a ferry named Fairlight keeps sailing past.
Ah, I see where this is going.
You got it. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah.
But they didn't just create another synthesizer. The Fairlight CMI was the world's first commercially available digital sampling instrument.
Whoa, hold on. That's a big deal. We have to explain this. Sampling was huge.
Absolutely. For listeners who aren't music tech experts, can you break down what sampling means?
Okay, imagine you want to capture the sound of, say, a trumpet.
All right, classic trumpet sound.
With old synthesizers, you'd have to recreate that sound using knobs and oscillators.
And I imagine that wasn't easy.
It was incredibly difficult and often sounded, well, pretty artificial.
So how did sampling change things?
With sampling, you actually record the trumpet. You convert it into digital information. It's like translating it into computer language, and then you can manipulate that sound directly.
Mind blown. So instead of mimicking sounds, they were capturing the real thing and shaping it. That's revolutionary.
Absolutely. It opened up a whole new world of sonic possibilities.
So what did this Fairlight thing actually look like?
It was a beast. It had two 6-octave keyboards, an alphanumeric keyboard, a screen called a VDU.
Standard stuff, kind of.
For the time, yeah. But then it also had this light pen.
A light pen. This is 1979, right? Long before touchscreens.
Exactly. And it let musicians interact with the sound waves on the screen directly. They could literally draw sounds, creating new textures, and manipulating existing ones.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like something out of science fiction.
It was light years ahead of its time. The Fairlight could edit, loop, mix sounds, even sequence samples, and all of this using two 8-bit processors.
Two 8-bit processors. That doesn't seem like much by today's standard.
No, but back then, that was cutting-edge technology. It was a phenomenal amount of computing power.
Okay, so we have these two brilliant Aussies, this revolutionary instrument. Who were the first to get their hands on it?
Well, in 1979, the very first Fairlight CMIs were sold to Peter Gabriel and Stevie Wonder.
Whoa, talk about early adopters. Peter Gabriel and Stevie Wonder, that's a pretty impressive endorsement.
Absolutely. And they weren't just messing around. They were incorporating the Fairlight into their music in truly innovative ways.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What kind of impact did the Fairlight have on their music? Was it instantly recognizable?
Oh, yeah. Peter Gabriel, who was always pushing boundaries, totally embraced the Fairlight. One of the first popular songs to feature it was his 1982 hit Shock the Monkey.
Oh, wow. Shock the Monkey. That's a classic. I can definitely hear those unique sounds in it now.
Exactly. Those iconic, almost otherworldly soundscapes. That's the Fairlight at work. It was like nothing anyone had ever heard before.
So those sounds in Shock the Monkey, created in a workshop in Sydney, ended up shaping the sound of popular music worldwide. Amazing.
Absolutely. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The Fairlight's impact was huge. It wasn't just a machine. It was a catalyst for creativity and innovation on a global scale.
All right, I'm hooked. We've got the inventors, we've got the early adopters, and we know the Fairlight could create some mind-blowing sounds. I need to know more about how it took over the music scene and changed everything.
Well, let's dive in. We've got a lot more ground to cover. From Herbie Hancock to the Human League, the Fairlight's influence was everywhere.
Wow, from jazz to pop, it really did touch every genre, didn't it? I can't wait to hear more about how these artists used it and what made their approaches so unique.
We'll get into all of that. Buckle up. It's going to be a fascinating journey.
I'm ready. Let's go. Okay, so the Fairlight CMI wasn't just some niche thing. It was used by a whole range of artists, from pop stars to experimental musicians. But let's dig into some specifics. You mentioned Herbie Hancock's Rocket. What made the Fairlight so special in that track?
Hancock was already known for using synths in really innovative ways, but the Fairlight gave him all these new sounds to play with. He created these otherworldly, almost futuristic textures. You just wouldn't have heard anything like that in jazz before.
You know those scratching robotic sounds in Rocket always stuck with me? Was that the Fairlight I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And it wasn't just traditional instruments he was sampling. He was recording everyday sounds like turntable scratching or metallic clangs, then turning them into rhythmic and melodic elements. It's like he invented a whole new language of sound.
So he was using the Fairlight to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary.
Yeah.
Like some kind of sonic sculptor shaping sound in a way that no one had done before.
Exactly. And don't forget, this was 1983. Way before the fancy digital audio workstations we have now, Hancock was a pioneer, pushing the limits of what was possible with this brand new technology.
What was it about this one instrument that attracted such different artists?
The Fairlight offered a level of creative control you just couldn't find anywhere else back then. It wasn't just about the sounds, but the way you could manipulate them. Looping samples, creating sequences, layering sounds. It was like having a whole studio in one machine.
So it wasn't just a cool new sound, it was a tool that let artists bring their sonic visions to life in a whole new way.
Exactly. And that's why it appealed to so many different types of artists, whether you were a jazz innovator like Hancock or a synth pop band like the Human League. The Fairlight gave you the power to create something truly unique.
Speaking of the Human League, they had such a distinctive sound. How did they use the Fairlight to create that?
They used it to create those lush, layered synth textures that became their signature. They'd use the Fairlight's orchestral sounds, but manipulate them, distort them, process them to make something entirely new.
It's like they took those familiar sounds and transformed them into this futuristic, almost dreamlike soundscape.
That's what made the Fairlight so exciting. It wasn't about perfectly copying existing sounds, but transforming them into something completely original.
Okay, I have to ask about those iconic gated reverb drums. You know, the ones we associate with so much 80s music. Did the Fairlight play a role in that?
It absolutely did. The Fairlight made it super easy to create that gated reverb effect, which became a staple in 80s pop and rock. You can hear it all over Peter Gabriel's Intruder. It quickly spread to other artists like Phil Collins and Prince.
It's funny how certain sounds can instantly take you back to a specific era. And to think, this iconic 80s sound came from a machine created by two guys in Australia.
It really shows the power of innovation and how one invention can shape a whole genre of music.
We've talked about how the Fairlight impacted jazz, pop, and even rock. But what of other genres? Did it have any influence on electronic music?
Oh, absolutely. Artists like Jean-Michel Jarre, a true pioneer of electronic music, loved the Fairlight. It was so versatile and could create these complex, evolving soundscapes. He used it a lot on his 1981 album, Magnetic Fields, and it helped define the sound of early electronic music.
So the Fairlight wasn't a one-trick pony. It could be used for everything from funky grooves to atmospheric soundscapes.
That's what was so great about it. It wasn't tied to any particular genre or style. It was like a blank canvas for sonic exploration. And you didn't need to be a musical genius to use it.
Wait, really? I always thought the Fairlight was notoriously difficult to learn.
It did have a reputation for being complex. But it was actually designed to be pretty intuitive and user-friendly, at least for its time. It had this amazing feature called Page R, which was like a library of pre-programmed sounds and sequences.
So you didn't have to be a master programmer to create amazing music with the Fairlight.
Not at all. Page R gave musicians a starting point, a set of building blocks to play around with and combine to create their own unique sounds. It was a brilliant way to make this complex technology accessible to a wider range of musicians.
I can picture musicians huddled around this machine, experimenting, sharing ideas, pushing the limits of what was possible. It sounds like an incredibly exciting time to be making music.
It absolutely was. The Fairlight created a sense of community and collaboration. It brought musicians together and sparked so much creativity, a wave of creativity that we're still feeling today.
We've talked a lot about how the Fairlight was used, but I'm curious about the creators themselves. What can you tell us about Kim Ryrie and Peter Vogel, the two Australians who brought this incredible invention to life?
They were a fascinating pair. Ryrie was the visionary, the one with this grand idea of using computers to make music. He was a self-taught programmer and engineer, always pushing the boundaries of technology.
What about Vogel? What was his role?
Vogel was the electronics expert, the one who could take Ryrie's ideas and make them real. He was brilliant at designing and building hardware, and he loved music just as much as Ryrie.
Sounds like the perfect team, each bringing their unique skills to the table.
They were a classic example of a dynamic duo, the visionary and builder, and together they created something that truly revolutionized music.
It's an amazing story, and we're just getting started. I'm ready to dive even deeper into the legacy of the Fairlight CMI and how it continues to impact music today.
Well, hold on tight. We're about to explore how the Fairlight's influence echoes through music history, shaping the sounds we hear every day.
Okay, so we've covered the minds behind the Fairlight and all these amazing artists who used it. But what really blows my mind is how this one machine changed the whole music industry. It's like it caused a paradigm shift, you know?
You hit the nail on the head. The Fairlight's impact went way beyond just a few hit songs. It totally changed how music was created and produced.
How so? Break it down for me.
Well, before the Fairlight, if you wanted to create complex, studio-quality music, you needed tons of expensive equipment and a whole team of engineers.
So it sounds like the Fairlight democratized music production. Suddenly, artists who couldn't afford a big, fancy studio could experiment with sounds, make intricate arrangements, and produce professional-sounding music all on their own.
Exactly. It was a total game changer for independent musicians and smaller studios. It leveled the playing field, letting more voices be heard, and it also opened up new ways to collaborate.
I can imagine musicians all gathered around the Fairlight, sharing samples, brainstorming, and creating music together.
You got it. It really fostered a sense of community and shared exploration. And that spirit's still alive in music production today, partly thanks to the Fairlight.
It's amazing to think how two guys in Sydney, with their passion for music and technology, started a revolution that still influences how music is made today.
It truly is. It shows you the power of innovation. They saw the potential of computers in music way before most people even knew what a personal computer was, and they took risks, pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Okay, so we know the Fairlight was innovative and influential, but what about its legacy? We don't see it around much anymore, so how do we see its impact on the music we listen to today?
That's a great question. The Fairlight's legacy lives on in a few ways. First, the techniques it pioneered, things like sampling, looping, and digital sequencing, are now standard in music production.
So every time we hear a sample in a song or a beat that's been looped, we're hearing the Fairlight's influence.
Exactly. The Fairlight's DNA is woven into the fabric of modern music. And beyond the technical stuff, the Fairlight also changed the sound of music. It introduced a whole new palette of sounds, digital textures, and timbres that no one had heard before.
And that inspired countless musicians to explore new sonic territories and create unique, groundbreaking music. It's wild to think how far-reaching its influence has been.
It is. It's a testament to how a single invention can ripple through time, shaping the sounds of generations to come.
It's funny, you know, we often think of technology as cold and impersonal, but the Fairlight story shows us how it can be a tool for creativity, a catalyst for human expression.
I couldn't agree more. The Fairlight wasn't just a machine, it was an instrument that unleashed human creativity. A perfect example of what happens when technology and art collide.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from a workshop in Sydney to the heart of the music industry, exploring the birth, the rise, and the lasting impact of the Fairlight CMI.
And what a journey it's been, full of innovation, creativity, and the power of human ingenuity.
Absolutely. To everyone listening, the next time you hear a catchy sample or a beat that gets you moving, think about the Fairlight CMI, those two Australians who dared to imagine music made with computers. Keep exploring, keep listening, and keep creating. That's all for today's Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.